On today's Locked On Texans podcast, can Houston make a playoff push? Cody and I get into that. And with extra bodies coming back, how will Houston adjust their starting lineup?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy, Hickman. And of course, joining me as always is your Texans beat reporter, credentialed media member, and Sports Illustrated's own. That's right, we got SI in the building, Cody Davis.
We got to start doing that dance. Whatever dance CJ and them be doing.
I'm mad. Listen, I'm so mad Tank Dell didn't keep 13 because
my God,
7-13 connection with that little dance. You talk about marketing, you talk about HEB commercials.
Look. Let me say, at first I thought it was lame, but knowing how well Tank Dell has looked through the first couple of weeks, John, I would have loved it too, man. I gotta say.
It would have been great. If you are new to the Locked On Texans podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast, and make sure that you follow on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Thank you to all of our returning listeners and viewers as we continue to talk Texans every day. For today's podcast, we're going to look at the unsung heroes through 4 games. Also, the injury updates and returns. Titus Howard, Juke Scruggs. How is that going to affect the Houston Texans offensive line? But first, Cody, the Texans 5-game outlook. We're looking at a schedule where Houston, who just took on the Pittsburgh Steelers, now have Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Cincinnati. So they take on the NFC South and they take on Cincinnati. For Houston, what are your thoughts? Because I look at this and I'm going to give it to you. This is, and shout out to my man Corey Barrett, shout out to my man V. Those guys are in Texans Twitter, had a great conversation today in the Twitter spaces, and this is something that I wanted to bring up. With Houston getting this statement win on Sunday versus the Steelers, I think they're entering in their playoff push run of the season. You got to get it early and on. For a team that's building like Houston, for a team that can't necessarily afford to lose games late. And I think when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, that's a winnable game. The Saints, the Panthers is a winnable game. This is what I would consider their playoff push for an opportunity to make a playoffs in the first time in 3 years.
You said 5 games. We should have did 6 games because right after the Cincinnati Bengals game, there is a home game against the Arizona Cardinals. We have their first pick, so I'm pretty sure Arizona will probably gladly give the Houston Texans that victory. But, John, look, last week we talked about the possibility of this team winning the AFC South. But I don't want to look at it as a playoff push as of right now. However, the Houston Texans are in a position where they could win at least 3 of these next 5 to 6 games because, look, the New Orleans, let me start with the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, as you mentioned, the quarterback play isn't there. And CJ Stroud is already going to outduel what Atlanta has under center in Desmond Ridder. By the way, I thought Desmond Ridder was going to be at least better in his sophomore campaign. I'm not about to look at him and say that he was definitely the Atlanta Falcons franchise quarterback. However, I did thought that there would be better play coming from him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 4 games into the regular season, I believe he has only thrown for like 970 yards, 3 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. Things are not looking good as of right now. The New Orleans Saints, that's a banged up organization, a banged up team, especially at the quarterback position. Derek Carr has not been the quote unquote savior of the New Orleans Saints like we all thought and hoped he would be. And yes, I said we, because as you guys know, I bleed black and gold because I'm from the New Orleans, baby. But when you look at the other teams, John, I'm looking at this outlook, and it's ironic because I think the only team that might have an opportunity to give them issue, give them problem, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Baker Mayfield, he's playing pretty good to start the 2023 season. And yes, I'm including that with the Cincinnati Bengals because look, you take a look at every single week, it seems like Joe Burrow is dealing with a new injury. And I don't know if it's the players. I don't know if it's just a slow start to the season, but Cincinnati has not looked great to start the season. So the Texans are in a really good position to win, let's say 3 or 4 of their next 6 games. And if that's the case, John, just like you alluded to, this could be a situation where we could be on the verge of the Houston Texans making the playoffs for the very first time since 2019.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm looking at, guys, why I believe this is this could be a reality for Houston. This is a strong possibility.
Oh, this schedule.
Honestly,
it looked harder before the season started.
They probably gotten through the rougher part. And what I like about this schedule is once they come out of the Arizona game, they take on Jacksonville. That's going to be their first division game since they took on Jacksonville last week when they got the win. And so that's where you look at a situation for Houston where that moment, that part of the schedule for a team like Houston, a young team who is riding hot right now, getting a lot of national love, which is something that Houston hasn't gotten in a very long time in a positive way. This is a schedule. This is the part of the schedule where you have to take advantage. And I think this is why that Colts game was so important for Houston to win, because that would have given them that lead in the division. They would have been sitting on top of the world in the division right now.
That would have been too much. Texans 3-1. No,
well, too much. This is a franchise that needs that, right? But yeah, I'm looking at Atlanta, I'm looking at New Orleans, I'm looking at Carolina, and I'm looking at Tampa Bay. One thing that Houston has shown to be able to do to this point, which what they have not been able to show under Davis Mills at quarterback, under Pep Hamilton's offensive coordinator leadership, under whoever, is score the ball, right? It started in that second half versus the Indianapolis Colts and has carried over for the past 8 quarters. So 10 quarters total, they've been able to score the ball. Houston now averages 24 points per game. When I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons, who they take on this Sunday, 15.5 points. They take on the Saints, 15.5 points. They take on the Cincinnati Bengals as of right now through 4 games, 12.3 points. The highest scoring point per game team that they're going to take on is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I think that as long as Houston is able to continue to score, create turnovers, and make the life of the quarterback difficult, which is what we've been seeing the past 2 games. When you look at how Houston has been able to disguise some of their coverages and get after the quarterback, Houston is going to put points on the board. That is the reality as of right now. And I do think Atlanta is one of those teams that may have, the tougher defense than what Houston has played maybe since week 1 of the Baltimore Ravens game. I would like to credit the Saints have a very good defense. I like their defense. I like the Atlanta Falcons defense for what it's worth. But if Houston can put points on the board, I don't see a reason why not Houston can't beat Atlanta. Houston can't beat New Orleans, right? And then here's the key part of this schedule. After Atlanta, you got New Orleans. Guess what you guys got, Texans fans? You got a bye week. And when you look at this team that we're going to talk about the injuries to Kendrick Green, who's now out. When you look at this team, the amount of injuries that have been stacking up, kind of like what went on with the Tennessee Titans last year with a lot of those injuries. This is a team that's going to take that bye week and they're going to utilize it, and they're going to be able to get guys healthier. If you're already healthy, we're going to get you healthier. If you need more time to come back, especially if they're in the middle of a playoff push, then we're going to give you that extra time to get healthier in that bye week. I would not be shocked if we look at Atlanta, if we look at New Orleans, if we look at Carolina, if we look at Tampa Bay, and if we look at Cincinnati. The Arizona game is back home November 19th. But in the next 5 games, guys, from what we are seeing, from how well both sides of the team has been playing, I wouldn't be shocked if Houston goes 4-1 during that span. Honestly, the leadership, vet play from the rookie quarterback and C.J. Stroud, being able to get guys involved. Bobby Slowick, every week since week one, he's been able to progress as an offensive coordinator. And again, I maybe I'm the only one that gets excited when I talk about Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie playing together and what that does for this defense. And John Gennard, who I gave one of the unsung heroes to, who's leading this team in sacks right now. That defense is playing well. The linebackers continue to get better. Why not Houston? And you know why I say why not Houston? Because for the past 2 seasons, actually for the past 3 seasons, 4-12, 4-12, 4-12-1, with the top. It's always been, look at Houston. They have an opportunity to change all of these narratives under the leadership and coaching guidance of DeMeco Ryans. So I believe that they have an opportunity to go 5-1 in this next 5 games, 4-1 in the next 5 games.
Let me say this really quick. 9 games into the season, based off of what you just said, John, that put them at 6-3, which means offensive rookie of the year will already be wrapped up for CJ Stroud. But if they are 6-3, they are 6-3, 9 games into the season, coach of the year should go to DeMeco Ryans. Plain and simple.
Houston,
plain and simple.
If it comes down to week 18 and Houston has a chance, they can lose that game. And DeMeco Ryans should still be coach of the year. Listen, honestly, right now, we're going to talk about our unsung heroes through 4 games to close out today's show. Next, we have the injury updates and returns. But I'm serious, guys. I think Cody and I are speaking from what we were seeing. Houston has a chance to make a playoff run, and the next 5 games are very critical. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wires, I know a lot of you guys are out there doing that. I'm not alone. Every week, we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. Packers running back Aaron Jones didn't fare well with limited work returning from his hamstring injury against the Lions in week 4. I know because he started and I moved him up in the place of David Montgomery. So I lost out bad, but I'm not losing faith in Aaron Jones and what he can do for my team. With some extra time to heal off and a mini bye week, look for Jones to be ready to show his old explosive self as a runner and receiver on Monday night in Las Vegas. He will feel right at home with plenty of cheeseheads making the trip to the desert against a bad Raiders overall defense. Not too far down from the road where Jones Star was born in his hometown of El Paso, Texas. And so roll with Aaron Jones. I'm going to roll with him another week. I think he sees me through. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship game is about each player being a perfect fit with your vehicle. Same as your vehicle, excuse me. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Make sure that you check out eBay Guaranteed Fit. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. Today is Wednesday, which means your Houston Texans will begin making preparations for their Week 5 contest against the Atlanta Falcons, a winnable game, as John and I agreed upon in the first segment. However, we got to start looking at the injury updates and returns because, look, later on today, depending on when you guys hear and watch this podcast, all of us will be reporting Tytus Howard is back on the field for the very first time since training camp, along with Juice Scruggs. John, I'm going to save my thoughts about that a little bit later in the show, but of course, Houston Texans 2023 campaign, injuries continue to hit this organization. We saw it Sunday. Kendrick Green went down with a knee injury. It was first reported by a good friend of the show, a really good friend of ours, DJ Bieniemy of ESPN was the first to report that Green will be out indefinitely with a torn meniscus. And I truly, truly hate this for that young man, because Green was definitely on the trajectory of changing his career. We saw after the Houston Texans acquired him in that trade, we saw how the fans with the Pittsburgh Steelers were celebrating. Everyone knows what Mike Tomlin said when he just flat out said Kendrick Green isn't good at football. We saw and we heard and we read everything that Steeler Nation had to say about Kendrick Green. However, when you take a look at how well this offensive line has played ever since the starting game against the Baltimore Ravens, Kendrick Green, who appeared in 3 of the first 4 games, was part of the reason why this offensive line was playing better, especially at keeping CJ Stroud upright in order for him to make plays. 3 games in, Kendrick Green had recorded a pass blocking grade of 69.9. And against his former team on Sunday, that young man was having a phenomenal game. According to Pro Football Focus, in that game alone, he had a pass blocking grade of 80.5. He has not given up a sack, has only given up 4 pressures, and I'm truly hoping that Kendrick Green not only return back to health, but at the same time keep that same momentum and positivity going. Kendrick, if you run across this podcast, man, I am rooting for you. Always was chopping it up with you in the locker room, man, and trust me, man, I hurt knowing that you're going to be out for an extended amount of time. He was playing left guard. John, the next issue is with Juice Scruggs coming back, with Titus Howard coming back, which he's going to get that right side taken care of. We ain't got to worry about that. However, what do the Houston Texans do at left guard now? Because I'm looking at this from a standpoint, I understand Juice Scruggs was your projected starting center after the injury of Scott Quisenberry, but Jerry Patterson has not looked bad as this team's starting center.
Not at all. First of all, was that a Kendrick Green promo or what was that? What was
Hey,
you trying to get Kendrick Green on the show?
Look, we all had our doubts about Kendrick Green when the Texans traded for him. I had my doubts as well. However, once again, look at that offensive line play. It has been better, and he's part of the reason why. I'm not saying that he was having a Pro Bowl caliber season. All I'm saying is I really feel for this young man because he was on a trajectory of changing his career, man.
That sounded like you wanted a Kendrick Green drop for Locked On Texans. That's all I'm saying. But no, in all seriousness, Kendrick Green was playing some good football for Houston. No doubt about it. The news sucks because, again, for Houston, you're taking away that continuity. They've been able to overcome that the past 2 games, not giving up a sack. And you see, again, all hands on deck. But that news sucks. Now, back to Jared Patterson and the Juice Scruggs. Guys, I'm going to keep it real with you. If it ain't broke,
don't fix it.
Don't fix it. Especially considering, well, hey, our left guard that was playing just went out, and we're going to need a body there. And not only are we going to need a body there, we're going to need somebody we can trust. Guys, Juice Scruggs is a very good blocker. He was brought in, I know, to be the Houston Texans starting center. I get all of that. But as Cody already alluded to, Jared Patterson's playing some good football. He's playing some good football, and I like what he's able to do, what he's been able to do for Houston at that center position. And so this is an opportunity for the next man up mantra and that mentality Houston has and every football team has to just come out here and produce, get some playing time where you can get playing time at. I think Juice Scruggs should be at the center position, at the left guard position. And I'm going back to look at some of his snaps. Juice Scruggs has some guard position. Back in 2020, he had 66 snaps at left guard. Back in 2021, had nearly 700 snaps at right guard. So he's played guard in his collegiate career before. It was just last year he he was dominant. He was so damn dominant at center.
Hmm.
That's why Houston loves him. Maybe I don't rush Juice back, right? I think there's a possibility that Josh Jones can come back this week. Again, of course,
Because
Juice.
he's not on IR.
He's not on IR. You got Tyus Howard coming back. Laremy Tunsil could come back, though I'm hearing it's not necessarily a strong chance. What's going on with that? Cody knows something. He knows something. But yeah, Juice at left guard is probably the way to go, unless Houston feels like they want to make sure that they give him an extended amount of time to be healthy as possible. If Josh Jones comes back, you move him to left guard. I would rather have Juice, but I can understand that way of thinking. I do want to say this. It's kind of odd, and it's going to come off very weird, but understand what I'm saying. The injuries for Houston may have turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And I say this because I don't know when the last time Houston had offensive line depth. And so with the injury to Laremy Tunsil, with the injury to Tyus Howard, with the injury IR with Kenyon Green, with everything that's been going on through that process, I wouldn't be mad if Houston brought Kendrick Green back next year. I wouldn't be mad if Houston brought George Fant back next year, who, quiet as kept, has been playing some good football for Houston.
Yes, sir.
And has been the best lineman for Houston the past 2.5 weeks, the past 10 quarters, right? I wouldn't be mad if Houston brought back
Josh Jones.
Josh Jones. I still got to see, because Josh Jones, he's not that good. But for Houston to finally have depth in how they got here, it's kind of odd, but it's a good thing, because now when you move forward, when you have these things, it's not a scare anymore, because you got somebody in the locker room on a roster that you trust. But I think, listen, guys, Tyus Howard, right tackle. You paid him right tackle money. Don't think about moving him inside because Fan has been playing football.
Gosh.
You can move. Let's not do that. Let's leave that
not.
tackle. Let's allow him to be that bookend tackle that you paid the money to. The investment is there. Let him do it. And I also want to say this, guys, playing the Atlanta Falcons, understand this. Houston gave up 11 sacks in the first 2 weeks. They haven't given up any since. Atlanta only has 5 sacks, on the year. I am not afraid of this defensive front, of this front seven. So this may be the Dameon Pierce game. This may be the game where we see CJ have a crazy amount of time because of the lack of pressure, which is why you want to make sure whoever you are trusting to insert in at left guard, they're able to come in and execute what you want to do, which is why I go back to not necessarily rushing Juice back to start if you have somebody primed and ready that can do what you want to do on the football field. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? I know it's been tough for me, guys. Got a baby on the way, got so many things in my life changing. And sometimes I can't get out of my brain's way. My brain can't get out of its own way. And one thing that helps me is talking to somebody. Therapy helps you. It has helped me figure out what's holding me back. And so if it helped me, I believe it can help you as well, to work for yourself instead of working against yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend. Our brain needs to be our friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back, Locked On Texan listeners, Texan fans across the world. Before we close out today's show, the unsung heroes through 4 games. Cody, who you got?
On the offensive side of the ball, I'm going with a guy that you just finished giving him some praise, and that's my guy, George Fant, because he was tasked with the challenge of stepping in for Tyus Howard, the second best offensive lineman for the Houston Texans. And if we being 100, especially during training camp, because we didn't know how fast these rookies was going to get adapted to everything. A top 10 player on this roster. And George Fant has done a phenomenal job at filling in the void left by Titus Howard. This is a man 4 games into the 2023 season has only given up 1 sack and has recorded a pass blocking grade of 71. He is by far the best offensive lineman that the Houston Texans have trotted out there consistently week after week after week after week to start this season. Once again, I understand this offensive line hasn't been the best. It's been injury plagued by far. However, when you take a look at the production that CJ Stroud was still able to do, George Fant is part of the reason why. But on the defensive side of the ball, John, I'm going to give 2 players, and it basically goes hand in hand. MJ Stewart and Eric Murray. When you take a look at the defensive backfield, Sunday was the very first time that we saw the pairing of Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie. The first 3 games of the season, it was either one or the other, or both of those guys were out. Just like what I said about George Fant, MJ Stewart and Eric Murray, they did a very solid job of holding it down in both of those guys' absences. And I want to say this. In the first segment, you and I played around with the idea of DeMeco Ryans winning Coach of the Year. The fact that he have made Eric Murray an unsung hero for the Houston Texans is part of the reason why he has the ability to be a DC coach, which is a developmental coach, because this is the best that I've seen Eric Murray play ever since I started covering this game. And John, you know, you and I had this running joke as to why is Eric Murray on this team. In 2023, that young man, he has done a very solid job of filling in the void due to the injuries in that defensive backfield.
So for me, guys, I'm going with the top 5 guy. Who's top 5 in receiving yards right now?
Nico Collins.
Who's the man? Who's the man with the plan? Nico Collins has been a hero for this team because for several reasons. There was no undefined number 1 receiver for this team. Not even through preseason. And a lot of that I thought you've heard me say, I don't think no team in the NFL took preseason seriously this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is why I thought we saw a lot of teams struggling offensively. But Nico answered that question. And not only did he answer that question, he's answering that question in an emphatic way, right? And he's showing you guys, again, Nico made all of the improvements going into his sophomore year. It was just the inabilities of the offense. And so when you look at a guy who I think is 40 yards away from his career high through 4 games, when you're looking at a guy who's top 5 already in receiving yards in the NFL, when you're looking at a guy who is going out there, and we talk about Robert Woods being a security blanket, that's true. But who's been the favorite target for CJ? It's been Nico. He's been the second most dominant player on this offense. And so there's no way I can't give him an unsung hero. And this is simply based off of what he's had to go through to get here. Injuries, offensive problems, quarterback issues. This young man is growing up as a very good player right in front of our eyes. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm still going with a starter. I'm still going with the guy, Cody. Have you gave that man an apology yet when you're in your media scrums? When I told y'all how ridiculous it would have been for Houston to ever consider trading Steven Nicholson. Do you guys know that he's only allowing right under 40 passer rating, 40% pass rating his way, 2 interceptions on the year, a few pass deflections. He's been everything that you want your number 1 cornerback to be.
Man.
And he's made everything easier for the rest of that defensive backfield. I also want to give some shout out to Shaq Griffin, man. I'm eating my words as well. Shaquille Griffin has played some very good football for Houston, especially mainly after Derek Stingley went down. And so you gave it 2 on the defensive side of the ball. I'm giving it 2 as well because of the defensive coach that we have here in Houston. Those guys have truly bought in. and you're seeing guys have great games. You're seeing Nico have a career year to this point. If he has another 100-yard game, technically that's his career year. Steven Nelson locking boys down, man, not getting – I think the last game he maybe had 2 targets with no receptions. This is what Steven Nelson has been doing. So, and it's only going to get better considering the talent level that they're playing on the offensive side of the ball and how he's able to make plays. He is a true playmaker in every sense of it. So those are my unsung heroes through the first 4 games of the year. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Give me a follow at John_Hickman12 on Twitter and follow me on Bleacher Report, the Bleacher Report app, John Hickman.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.